Okay, I'm going to do another Gaussian elimination example problem for you guys, just in case you need to see another one. Okay, so my top row here for my equation, using the coefficients, 1 for the x value, 1 for the y value, 2 for the z, and 19 for the constant on the right side of the equal. 3 for the x, 1 for the y, 2 for the z, 31 on the right. Bottom row, row 3, 1 for the x, 3 for the y, 2 for the z, and 25. The setup there is the easy part. Okay, the very first thing I need to make sure of is that I have a 1 in the top left, and I do. So the next thing I need a 0 right here. So that 3 is going to be my target. So this whole row is going to be the one that changes. So I'm going to transfer row 1 and row 3. Transfer those guys over. I'm not using them yet. This is the guy I'm going to target. Anytime I need a 0 here, I need to combine him with the row right above. If I combine a 3 and a 1, that's going to give me a 4. So what I need to do here is I need to multiply this entire row times -3, and that'll turn my 1 here into a -3. If I distribute that -3 all the way through, he turns to a -3. -3 times 2 is a -6, and then -3 times 19 gives me -57. Okay, so now I've multiplied row 1 times -3, -3 times row 1. I'm going to add that with my row 2. So when I do -3 added with +3, it turns to 0. -3 plus 1, I get -2. -6 plus 2, I get -4. And then -57 plus 31 gives me 26. Sorry, excuse me, -26. So I got the 0 where I need it. Next thing I need to do is I need to target this guy right here, turn him into a 0, so this whole row is going to change. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer row 1 over, and I'm going to transfer my row 2 over. Those guys aren't going to change right now. So I need to combine this guy with the number 1 directly above it. Well, right now if I combine them, 1 and 1 will give me 2. Can't have that, so this actually needs to be a -1. So I'm going to multiply by -1 all the way through. -1 times 1, -1. -1 times 1, -1. -1 times 2 is -2, and -1 times 19 is -19. Okay, so I just did -1 times all of row 1, and now I'm going to add that with row 3. So now when I combine -1 and 1, I get 0. When I combine -1 with row 3, -1 plus 3, I get 2. When I combine -2 and 2, I get a 0. When I combine -19 plus 25, I get 6. So I've got my 1, 0, 0. The next thing here, I need a 1. This is my target. He needs to be a 1, so all of row 2 is about to change. So I'm going to transfer rows 1 and 3. 1, 1, 2, 19. And row 3 as well. 0, 2, 0, and 6. Those guys aren't changing. Alright, so what I need to do here is I need to turn this into a 1. Remember, when I turn something into a 1, I've got two options. I can either multiply by the reciprocal, in this case, which is a -1 over 2, or I can just divide the whole row by this number. To me, it's easier to divide it by -2. So I'm going to take row 2, and I'm going to divide it by -2. So 0 divided by -2 still gives me a 0. -2 divided by -2 gives me a 1. -4 divided by -2 gives me 2, positive 2. And then -26 divided by -2 gives me positive 13. Okay, so the next thing, I've got 1, 0, 0. Now I've got my 1 in the middle. I need this dude to be a 0. So this is the row that I'm targeting. All right, so rows 1 and 2, I'm going to transfer those guys over. 1, 1, 2, 19, 0, 1, 2, and 13. All right, so again, if I'm turning something into a 0, I need to combine it with the 1 directly above it. Well, if I combine a 2 with a 1, that's going to give me a 3. I need this 1 directly above me to actually be a -2. Positive 2 combined with a -2. So I have to multiply this whole row by -2. and I'll write it down below. Negative 2 times 0, 0. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. And negative 2 times 13 is negative 26. So now that I multiplied negative 2 times row 2, negative 2 times row 2 is what I just did. I need to add that now with row 3, because that's what I'm targeting. So when I do my new row 2, after I multiply it, I'm going to combine it with row 3. 0 plus 0 is still 0. Positive 2 and negative 2, 0. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. And then 6 minus 26, negative 20. Okay, so I've got 1, 0, 0. I've got a 1 and a 0. Now my last target, this dude right here, needs to turn into a 1. So I'm changing. Oops, I didn't give myself enough room. I'm changing row 3. So rows 1 and 2, I'll transfer those guys over. 1, 2, 19, 0, 1, 2, 13. All right, so again, if I'm turning a number into a 1, to me, the easiest thing to do is divide the whole row. Well, negative 4 divided by what number is going to give me 1? Negative 4 divided by negative 4. So I'm going to take row 3, and I'm going to divide all of row 3 divided by negative 4. 0 divided by negative 4? 0. 0 divided by negative 4? 0. Negative 4 divided by negative 4, positive 1. Negative 20 divided by negative 4 is 5. Okay, and there is my row echelon form. So now if I'm actually going to solve that, I'm going to take this and put it back into equations. So I have 1x plus 1y plus 2z's equals 19. My second equation, I don't need the x's. I have 1y plus 2z's equals 13. And in my bottom equation, I don't need the x's or the y's, so I just have z equals 5. So for my solution, I know my z value is 5. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to plug it back in, so I can back substitution, so I can solve for my y. So it's actually going to be y plus 2 times 5 turns into a 10 equals 13. And now when I subtract 10 from both sides, I get y equals 3. So now that I know my y and my z, I'm going to plug both of those guys into this top equation so I can solve for x. I'll rewrite it over here. I've got x plus my y, which was 3, plus 2 times z, so that was 2 times 5. That was a 10, equals 19. So combine those like terms, I get x plus 13 equals 19. And now when I subtract 13 from both sides, I get x equals 6. Okay, and so I should be able to check that by plugging into my calculator 6, 3, and 5 for my x, y's, and z's. If I plug those back in, 6, 3, 5, plug that in the calculator, make sure it equals 19, it should check. Plug in 6, 3, 5 for your x, y, z, plug that into your calculator, make sure it equals 31, it should check. 6, 3, 5, plug that in for your x, y, and z into your calculator, and it should equal 25, it should check. Okay, all three of them should check. Sometimes one will work and the other two won't. Sometimes two equations will check and then the last one doesn't. If one of them does not check, then that means you have a mistake somewhere in your answer. Okay, so that's the entire problem right there. I'll zoom out so you can kind of see the whole thing all together. Zoom out some more. There's the entire problem.